It's hosted today by Atradius Collections. I want to thank GoPort for giving us their time and the platform to give us an opportunity to present what we do and how we can help you. I'm sure all of you are familiar, given the present situation with the coronavirus, that and many of us are trading on open credit terms, that the situation is quite dire out there, that there's been a huge number of defaults and a lot of us are struggling to receive payments. We have a huge amount of inquiries now coming in terms of asking us for our assistance. So today I'm going to go through a few things with you. The theme, of course, is how we can help any company, be it small or medium. I believe most of you are located in India. And the aim is, how we can help you or what you can do to recover your payments, especially when you're exporting outside of India and you might be unfamiliar with different jurisdictions in different countries. Bit of background about myself. So my name is Ivor Miric. I'm the Atradius Collections country manager for the Middle East and India market. I have a personal insolvency background, originally from Australia. I started my career in insolvency and then I moved to debt collection, where I've been doing that for a number of years. I started in the Sydney office and then moved to Asia 5 years ago, where I was based in Singapore. And now I'm managing the portfolio for Atradius Collections in the Middle East and in the India market. So a few things that I want to discuss today. As you can see, I'll give you a bit of facts and figures of who we are, where our presence is and where our offices around the world, so hopefully they can assist you. What a normal collections process looks like, and that might be different for your internal dunning process. This is sort of the best practices that we can share, that we've seen from our multinational customers and from our smaller customers. We pick and choose the best processes, and then we've selected a few things and a few hints that we can give you. Also, what can you do? What are your options when you find yourself in a situation where one of your buyers that you've been trading with for 5 years or 10 years, or just a new shipment on open credit terms, has defaulted, has paid, or they're just unwilling to pay? What are the options? Also, when you do have a bad debt, what really happens at that point in time? And then I stated, I'll leave the floor to open it up as many questions as possible. Okay, so some facts and figures. So for those of you who don't know, Atradius Collections, we are, I believe, the largest debt collection company in terms of physical locations around the world. We are linked to a very large Spanish-owned Dutch insurance company called Atradius Credit Insurance, which is the second largest trade credit insurer globally by market share. Atradius Collections is a sister company which was set up over 25 years ago to assist our customers in collecting accounts receivables or open terms. So per year we do everything in euro. Apologies, it's not in INR or crores because we're a European company. We approximately get about a 1.1 billion worth of inflow that's assigned to our various teams around the world. We have over 10,000 customers that place debts with us, unique customers. And per day, we average about 1 to 1.5 million euro per day that we collect. We are specialists in what we call first party or amicable debt collections, which is your standard third party where you're appointed debt collector and we're assigned an invoice or a few invoices to help you collect, or legal debt collections, whereas if you need help overseas, we can help you with a local solicitor to see what your options are in recovering the debt through the various courts. As I said, Atradius Collections is part of the Atradius Group. For those who are familiar, it is a trade credit insurer or a credit insurer. They're the second largest one around the world. They're almost 100 years old. They have access to over 100 million different companies worldwide, and they make about 20,000 different credit limit decisions per day. The Atradius Collections team, we don't do consumer debt. So I hope all of you out there are obviously in PVT type entities or even sole traders that have business-to-business type debts, because we are specialists in the recoveries of trade receivables, not consumer debt. What we do is we obviously, given our presence worldwide, we offer collections brokered in the local language. So for example, we have an office in Mumbai, or we have an office in Jakarta, in Singapore, in Hong Kong. I don't personally do the debt collections, but the local team there that understands the culture, that understands the process, are the ones that go through the collections process. And that's what makes us really unique. Approximately worldwide, there are 250 of us that all use the same platform. Now, our global presence, so this might be interesting to you because if you're trading overseas, you want to know where we are and where we can help you. So through our network, we can offer support in 96% of the countries worldwide. The countries where we can't support are normally blacklisted by the EU or sanctioned. So most of the war-torn countries in Africa or the Middle East, for example, Syria or Yemen, we unfortunately can't help you there. And I hope you're not trading there, but if you are, we are governed by the EU, so we are not allowed to assist you there. More closer to home, we have personally 33 unique countries where we are present. So where you can see in dark green is where we have our own physical presence. In light green is where we partner up with either solicitors or other debt collection providers. So for the countries that we are located in, it is listed there. I'll make these slides available to you. So if you do have any debtors in any of those countries, we have a physical office there where we can reach out to those customers. Okay, so the collections process and the collections worldwide. So I wanted to summarize for those that you've never used the debt collection, I guess, service provider, what the process looks like. Now, normally you have to engage a third-party debt collector, and there's an agreement there. You place a number of invoices, either your whole portfolio or a single invoice. Either or is fine. It really depends on your problems. Then it's normally passed on to the operations team, who are the debt collectors. They would look at some tracing. They would do company reports, director reports. We would look also to our sister company, Atradius Collections, to see, do we have any known defaults? What's their trading history? What's their payment terms? Have they been paying? Do we have any adverse information? And we normally make an assessment. The easiest way is obviously do it by telephone, like most debt collectors. We have our demand letters that go out in our letterhead, which threaten their credit rating, which works in some countries. The first one introduces that we've been appointed on behalf of you or our customer, that we contact them either by fax, phone, WhatsApp, WeChat. It really depends on the country. In some locations, in India, it's very common, for example, to do buy visits. If they're not responding to us, we have a team there, a network of teams who will drive down, granted that it's in an easy, accessible location, and do face-to-face buy visits. Some of you might ask what type of collections process we do. It's professional. As I said, we're linked to the second largest credit insurance company in the world, so we have our own legal and compliance that we have to adhere to. We don't operate in physical violence or threats. We do it purely under the jurisdiction of each country and what the legal system allows us to do. So this is very important for our large customers because you have a relationship with some of your buyers, but you also want to collect your debt or increase the chances of collecting. So if you are looking for that type of collector, we're not that one. We are above board and we follow the legal parameters that are allowed. Normally then we make a decision. The decision is usually payment plans, following with buyers, collecting checks, pressuring buyers for payments, or it could be recommending to close the case, or it could be recommending, look, this is the legal action that we think you should take against this buyer, either positive or negative. Here are the costs as well, we give you upfront. The decision's ultimately up to you with our recommendation. Normally, when we would involve you is if we ever agree on a partial payment plan, or if payment plans expand more than 3 months, if we need legal action, if we're missing some documentation, if there are some disputes, we'll always get you involved because the debt is yours and we're trying to assist you. Okay, now that's basically who we are and where we are. What my main theme of today is really a common occurrence that I see with our customers, and really the theme that I like to say is, where do you want to be in the queue for your money? So the picture basically in front of me, or that you can see, is a common occurrence for many of our customers. It's a picture that I use all the time when I meet customers the first time because they really don't know where they are waiting in the queue. What happens is a buyer closes down, they then pass the debt to Atradius Collections, and unfortunately I have to tell them it's too late. It's already 1 year, 2 years, 3 year old. And really the key part is what you do within that certain time period that really makes the difference between either a successful collect or not a successful debt. So my aim today is really to provide you insights on how collections can help and can be a meaningful part of, say, a credit management process, and not a result of just, we have a bad portfolio, pass it on to a debt collector and see if we get lucky. Also, I want to change your mindset that collections is a reactive measure, because it's not. It should be a preventive measure. It should be you at the front of the queue knocking on the door to try to recover your funds. And last of all, I'll cover how you can increase your chances of recoveries, especially in the international market when you're trading on open terms. So this is a lot of you will ask me what our success rates are. So this is an internal portfolio analysis that we do on a year-to-year basis. It shows you that the key to collections in any industry, no matter what sector you're in, no matter where you're exporting, what country, or where the buyer is located, that early intervention is crucial. The longer you wait, the lower the chance of recoveries are. So internally, this is something that we show to our customers who use us at an earlier stage. That's usually yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to interrupt you a bit.
Sure.
So we have, like the way you mentioned about, collection from outstanding buyers and everyone who are based out of different countries. So we have people who are based out of India who've been doing businesses out here, and they have their, debt collection from Sri Lanka, for example. So will that be also possible for them?
Yeah, we have a partner in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a very difficult country. India is a little bit easier because they use British common law, whereas Sri Lanka, I think, is still catching up. So we do have a number of inquiries, and we have a partner in Sri Lanka. Atradius itself doesn't have a physical presence there, but if you do have debtors in Sri Lanka that are obviously not paying, then that's something, yes, definitely we can look at, and we can see if we can help you.
All right, we can continue, and then I'll come up with another question.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, so this is basically a snapshot of, it really gives you a reflection of how you'll manage your own AR, the correlation between success rates and the number of years that the aging that is old. This is for Asia, our statistics. So the longer you wait, the chances are lower. It doesn't mean that we won't help you if the debt is over 1 or 2 or 3 years old. We'll always have a look at it, but we just want to manage your expectations that this is the average. Now, this obviously differs in times of economic crises. People think that when there's an economic crisis, be it a pandemic or a recession, that it's actually really good for debt collectors. It's not. It actually makes it very hard to recover funds because there's not a lot of capital in the markets. So when you're actually contacting buyers, we have a lot more work, but we have a lot more struggle retaining any funds that might be available to you. So the key is don't wait until it gets too bad. Get in there before and increase your chances of recovery. The other thing that I try to teach our customers is also, you might be trading with this buyer for another 5, 6, 7 years, but you don't know what their other creditor is doing. You might be waiting patiently for your funds, but other buyers, other creditors are already suing them. Now, if I'm being sued, why would I pay someone that's waiting patiently for the funds? I would be paying someone that's aggressively appointing a debt collector or appointing a lawyer and threatening to sue me, because you're going to prioritize whatever funds you have there to tell them to go away. Okay, so what can you do? Here's some of the tips that we give to our customers. I won't go through all of these because I'd rather your questions go through. Knowing your customers is obviously the first key. Get the basics right the first time. We do have some of our customers that still will, I can't believe it, in 2020, trade on oral contracts. Credit applications, credit forms are a must, especially ones containing correct names, company registration numbers. Make sure that you have the key contact persons for the payments, that the telephones are there, that the terms are acceptable, and that they actually agree, chop, seal your credit terms. We've seen a number of cases where we do go to court and the court rejects their credit application because it was never signed. And then we're stuck looking at delivery terms and purchase orders, which makes the complication a lot more difficult, especially international recoveries.
Just wanted to understand, does the Atradius Collections also support in debt collections from Indian customers, or only it's for exports from India?
No, we do both. We have an office. I manage the team there. Of course, we have a team of local collectors that speak Hindi and a few other different countries. We're located in Mumbai. We've been there for almost 7 years now. So we do have a local office in India Bulls Financial Center in Mumbai. So we can support domestic recoveries as well.
So, like the way I'm trying to understand is it's also for the domestic collections, but also if a particular person is doing exports and the particular buyer is an international buyer. So it's both the ways.
It doesn't matter because the fact that we have a presence in 33 different locations, there's no difference for us. So you might be an Indian customer of ours, but you're trading outside to Malaysia, for example, or Singapore. You would be serviced through our office in Mumbai, but the collections would happen where the closest office is. So we obviously wouldn't call from India. It doesn't make sense. We would call where our local office is. So if the buyer's in Indonesia, we'll have our Bahasa-speaking debt collectors contact the buyer locally. But you would be serviced from India.
All right. So based on where the particular person is based out of, the team will be contacting them accordingly.
Yes, exactly. Because we're a multinational company, we would contact locally. Sometimes they prefer to speak to the local person. There's no problem. If they want to speak to the international collector who's on the file, there's no issue there as well.
All right. So do you guys also help in collections from government organizations? So we have an attendee who basically is talking about his queries that they're providing cleaning services to municipal corporations on pan-India basis, which are basically the government organizations. Mm-hmm. So during this entire lockdown and due to Corona, there are huge outstanding with these organizations. So is there any kind of what you call a criteria on the type of organization or a buyer, or if it's fine if you contact government organizations as well?
It's completely fine to contact. It's completely in your legal right to contact government organizations. The difference is it's very difficult, especially when you're talking about pan-India or for developing countries, because they've got a lot more power than, say, a developed country would. It's quite common, say, in Indonesia or in China, there are state-owned companies, but they're linked to the government. So you can still initiate legal action on them. We generally try to say, no, don't do that, because it might cost you your contract. And normally governments, unless they're going to change, are good paymasters until crises occur. We can assist. It's difficult because it depends on, how large is this entity? Do they make 80% of your sales or for your services applied? Do you really want to risk losing your relationship if you do appoint a third-party collector, or do you appoint a lawyer? So we'd really look at who the government body is, how old the debt is, but there's no reason why we can't contact that government form and chase for payment. You're in your legal right to do that.
All right. So, way I can understand is a particular person who has a buyer who's basically a government organization. It's better to first try and understand the contribution of that organization, have a check, and then probably think of doing a legal action.
Yeah, I mean, legal action would be the last resort, of course, because if this is a key supplier, or if this is a key service provider for that individual, and 80% of their income or revenue comes from from the government body, or other contracts are linked to the government, then you obviously have to take a clean step back. It's quite difficult now in India domestically, because the courts are also closing. They're also changing the limitations of what you can sue. I know recently they increased the limit to 1 crore for NCLT. NCLT courts have been closed, so a lot will be going under the civil court system. My recommendation wouldn't be to sue now, to wait, see what the government mandates and puts into actual effect in law, and then you can ascertain, look, can we help? Can we do anything at this stage? But for the government, we always tread very lightly.
Okay. Also, does Atradius Collections support in VAT refund on account of export done? So we have a customer who has his VAT refund due in Vietnam. So it's stuck in the VAT department in Vietnam. So do you guys also look into those particular services?
Ooh, that would be new for us. We have a Vietnamese debt collector who sits in our Singapore office that can potentially contact. But to be honest with you, it doesn't fall in our normal scope of work, which is business to business and trade receivables. There's no reason why the individual can't send us a quick email and we can have a look at it, and we can see if we can help or not. But normally it's not in our scope of work. But if it is owing, there is no reason why we couldn't contact the associated department, especially in the local language, and to see what's the delay and why the payment's not coming through.
All right, and just want to inform one of the attendees that yes, Atradius does also help in domestic payments also. So you guys can, we'll be going to put out a survey after this presentation, so you guys can put out your queries as well. Ivor, you can carry on with the presentation. I'll wait for other questions to pop up.
Yeah, no problem at all. That sounds good. Okay, so as I was mentioning, prevention is always better than the cure. You can use collections, but if you can shore up your credit management process, that you can avoid using a collector or a lawyer, that's always the best thing. One of the mistakes that I see, and it depends on how many employees you have, is that the sales staff are actually entrusted to remind customers of paying their overdue debt. The best organizations that we have seen that we come across is they separate sales and credit management. So the credit team is always different from the sales team. Now, of course, they have to talk and be in line because sales rely on credit and credit rely on sales to get the contracts through. But when it becomes to a bad debt, it depends how the sales staff is incentivized. Now, if the sales staff has large commissions, do you think they're going to pressure the buyer as much as, say, a debt collector would or a lawyer would or the credit team that has different KPIs? So one of the things we have a look at is have a look at your current setup in terms of credit management. Explore if sales do have tied KPIs that are linked to lost sales. If they don't, maybe that's something you can bring in. Also have accounts department that can telephone major accounts in advance. There's no reason why you can't friendly remind someone. A lot of our customers, they don't actually call up before the invoice is due. This is a very good preventive measure where you can see if there's an issue. Are they missing maybe an updated statement of account, or there's a small discrepancy in what was shipped or what service was provided? You can then tackle then and there at a better time frame to see, are you going to get payment or not? As opposed to most of our customers, they wait 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, then they escalate, and then they go through that same cycle. So there's no reason why you can't put dates on due and have a friendly follow-up and just say, hey, I'm just following up, the payment's due in 2 days. Will those payments be released? It's a friendly tactic to remind your customers that the payment is nearing the due date. Okay, what else do we see, especially in international trade, but also domestic? Getting the correct contract represents the terms and conditions of the sale. Now, the best contract that we see, especially in terms of recoveries, are the ones where it takes into account what happens when there are disagreements, when there's a dispute, or when a payment doesn't come through. So a lot of the contracts that you might draft don't actually cover this, or they might miss this, and that might be the jurisdiction clause, it might be the default clause. And what we see time and time again in our customers' contracts is that they always put that the law or the jurisdiction that covers the service agreement or the credit application is subject to the local law. So if you're an Indian entity, you have the laws of India, but you're trading in Vietnam or you're trading in Malaysia. There is no point having the jurisdiction of the law in your local country if your buyer sits outside of the country, because they don't fall under the same laws. So what you need to make sure is that you have to enforce your contract in the buyer's location or the creditor's country. So the best contracts we come into account will always switch the jurisdiction clause and say, okay, I'm shipping goods to Singapore. I'll also change the jurisdiction of the contract to Singapore. So if there is a default, you can then sue in the courts of Singapore, which is closer to the creditor's country, and then you can enforce your judgment, or you can enforce what the court has ruled quicker. Otherwise, what you have to do, and what our customers get stuck with, is they have to first run the court case in the local country, get judgment in the local country, and then take the judgment into the creditor's country, which usually takes an extra year or every 2 years. By that time, the buyer is no longer operating, or they've sold their assets and they've moved on to another company. Also, you always use a local lawyer. Ensure that your contract is enforceable and that protects your interests, mutually beneficial as well. A lot of the Western legal processes, and this occurs in India because you have British common law, which is fantastic. But if you're trading into China or Vietnam or Indonesia, where they don't have British common law, it's a complete different legal system. So even though your contract is enforceable under British common law, it might not be in the terms or the jurisdiction of where your buyer is. Also, make sure the contract is always signed by an authorized representative and that it's stamped, that it's chopped. Also include a blacklist. So in some countries, in Australia, in Malaysia, for example, they do have what they call blacklists with payment defaults. So if that buyer doesn't remit funds, you can contact a credit registrar and list that this individual hasn't paid me or that entity hasn't paid me, and it works. We have many scenarios where the buyer calls a few years later and says, hey, I want to clear the debt, because other creditors do use those registries. Okay, bad debt. What happens next? So again, this is another common occurrence that occurs. This is inventable. I assume all of you out there have occurred this. This is why you're in the call. If you had a clean portfolio, you wouldn't be listening to me. The worst case scenarios are when your customers enter formal insolvency, either liquidation, administration, an IRP, for example, in India is appointed, or they're going through restructuring. It's very difficult in non-insolvency countries in Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa. For British common law countries, this is very common. Buyers generally disappear or close down. Middle East, for example, the difficulty that we have, there's runaway cases where we find a lot of Southern Indians will move to the Middle East. They'll set up a company. If it doesn't go well, before the company falls, they go back to India and they leave their debts owing in the UAE, and they never return. So we call that runaway. There's not much you can do there. So again, timing is crucial. If you know the buyer is struggling, and if you know that they haven't been able to pay, and you're still chasing for 100%, why not offer a full and final settlement? Why not be the first creditor to say, okay, we understand you're struggling. How about you take a haircut of 60 cents or 70 cents in the dollar? Because if you get that 60, 70 cents in the dollar, it's still better than getting zero at the end of the day. But a lot of our customers never entertain that because they just chase the 100%. They chase 100% of the debt. Then it's 2 or 3 years old. The buyer disappears, shuts down. It's too late. But they had the opportunity 6 months in to accept a settlement. Also here is, this is a good stage, of course. When you have a bad debt, you can appoint a debt collector like Atradius Collections. You can appoint a lawyer. Some of our customers, especially the multinationals, they have trade credit insurance. As I mentioned, there are large insurers there. There's Coface, there's Euler, there's Atradius. You can actually insure in the event of protracted default or insolvency. And a credit insurer obviously takes a fee for the percentage of the value of the debt, of the trade, but you're insuring your transaction. So in the event of default, you are covered up to 90%. Otherwise, you're really left with writing off the debt. Okay, this is some of our issues that we find with our customers, especially in Asia. Relationships and past trading history is one of the key reasons why they don't appoint a debt collector. They may have been trading with this buyer for 10 years, 15 years, and they just don't want to appoint a collector until it's too late. So it's very common in India to see portfolios that spend 2, 3, 4 years, then they'll outsource. But time and time and again, I have to tell our customers, look, I apologize, but the buyer is no longer active. You've waited too late. Maybe if it was in an earlier stage, we could help you, but unfortunately, it's too late. And we ask the questions, why didn't you appoint a lawyer? Why didn't you sue? I mean, if it was my money, I would. And they always say time and time again, oh, we had good trading history for 10 years. But with all businesses, they go up, they go down. You just don't know when it will go down. Also, this is all, I think it's intrinsic to Asia as well. In developing regions, trade is normally conducted through relationships. There's not many credit registry forums out there. So a lot of trade happens through relationships. However, as soon as you ship internationally and you're shipping to, say, Singapore or other developed regions in Asia or in Australia or in Europe, that doesn't necessarily apply. Relationships don't mean much. It's about money. Also, our customers believe that the issue will resolve itself. So a lot of the portfolios we see, nothing has happened. There has been no follow-up, or someone has called a few times, but it's the same individual chasing. They haven't threatened legal action. They haven't threatened a legal notice. They haven't threatened appointing a debt collector. They also think that the business relationship will automatically end if you appoint a third party. It's not the case. A lot of the times you can also say, look, I have an internal policy or credit management. I have to appoint a third party. I want to help you, but you're not paying, so I have to outsource it. As I mentioned, the cases are handed over to collections too late. That's the most common cause that we see in, say, Asia compared to Europe or America or Oceania. We've discussed this before. Sales staff are entrusted to collect the debt. It should be the credit team, not the sales team. The sales team are there to help because they're on the road. They are visiting the customers. But at one point, the sales should be put back and let the credit team take care of it. And also, collections are perceived to be a last resort measure and not a preventative measure. So unfortunately, one thing I'd like to see, and one of the reasons I've been in Asia for so long, is really educating our customers of making sure that you're appointing a third party or that you're escalating each debt at an early stage, not a reactive late stage. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ivor. So we have lots of questions which have popped up. One thing which we want to understand is, do you guys also provide services for analyzing the credit worthiness of a buyer? So, in terms of what kind of information would be reliable?
We don't personally. but our sister company, Atradius Credit Insurance, does. So they do assessments on credit limits. So there are credit insurance out there that do that, but Atradius Collections or debt collectors don't do the assessment on credit limits, no.
Okay. So there is this. There's Mr. Sri Garments. The director of Sri Garments is saying that one of his clients in Germany has applied for insolvency, and they are under credit protection now. So will it be possible for Atradius to recover the dues as they are under a protective shield process now?
No, so it's a form of restructuring that happens. It's very common in Germany that they can apply for the courts to give them extra time. If the court and the judge has ruled, say, 6 months or 3 months is quite common, it gives them the chance to restructure. Legally, we cannot. I, as a debt collector or a lawyer, cannot contact that debtor because the court has awarded them the time period or moratorium to assess their affairs and to offer a proposal. So unfortunately for those instances, we're not allowed to contact the buyer, no.
All right. Is there any limit on the debt in terms of recovery?
No, there isn't. Normally, we would look at, because we operate on a success fee model. So a lot of the questions that people ask is how do you charge? We have a success fee. Normally 1,000 USD is the minimum.
Okay, so 1,000 USD would be the minimum in terms of collections.
That's correct, yes.
All right. So, like you said, like in terms of insolvency, obviously there is no option. But see, for example, an MSME company wants to collect the funds from default customers or has a kind of like an average payment of over 180 delay days. So how does that happen? Like, is it a good time period to take an action right now?
It depends on your sector and depends on the goods that you're trading. Because if you're sending through mining equipment or you're sending through car parts, the goods that are not perishable, then they generally have a longer credit terms. But if you're shipping food, for example, if you're supplying perishable goods, then the credit terms, or food and beverage or restaurants, then normally your credit terms should be much, much shorter. I can't really assess until I know exactly what type of sector you're in, but we can share from what our customers are doing worldwide. This is normally the credit terms that they have. 180 to 1 year in India is normally a good time to appoint a third party, because in India, through our experience, they're habitual late payers. Everyone drags everything out. It's very, very rare to find someone who pays on 30 days. So, but I wouldn't go more than 180 days. If the terms are 60 days or 30 days, yeah.
Okay. So like the way you mentioned about perishable goods and also about the shipping bit, like right now because of COVID, so as you know, for containers and everything, you need a BL. So right now what's happening is people are directly releasing express BL in case of going through a bank. So because of that, a customer has denied payment. So how is it possible for Atradius to recover that payment?
These are difficult ones. I assume the customer's picked up the goods for that individual. If the customer has picked up the goods, then depending on where the location is, we would pressure them and say, you picked up the goods, and they're using a loophole not to pay. So that's something we would definitely look at. However, if they're trying not, I assume what is happening if they've picked up the BO is the goods are left at the port, they know they can't sell it, and they're throwing their hands up in the air. That's where it gets a bit difficult. Just for the individuals, yes, I'm happy to share the presentation for all of you. So there's no issue there at all.
Yeah, also, it's kind of a common question which everyone's asking. I would just like to inform them. We'll be sharing the presentation after this. Also, we'll be sharing a survey form. You guys can fill your questions, because what I can see across is it's very case-to-case dependent, because there could be a recovery of, say, like, the way people are talking about could be 5 years or 5 months, or, depends upon the industry type as well. So that's one thing which we would like to inform all the attendees, because every case is very different. Now, coming to a bit of generic questions, there are people who have recoveries even like for more than like 4 or 5 years, and the payment which is there is not domestic based. It's outside, like, it's international. I'm talking from Indian customers' point of view. So the documents were given to a particular client without payment, and the buyer is based out of Russia. So the Central Bank of Russia canceled the bank license. So in that case, what the customer needs to do?
Oof, that's a tricky one, to be honest with you. We do have support in Russia. To be honest with you, I'm not the expert on the Russian market, especially if the central bank has cancelled the bank's license. You can contact me individually. I can send it to our Russian team and they can see what they can do. But to be honest with you, if the central bank has cancelled the bank license, there's probably some either fraud or God knows what's happened there. So it's not a standard trade receivable default that a debt collector would be appointed. So depending on the size of the debt, Raj, I can see you've answered the question, asked the question. I would have to have a look at it. It is 2015, so could you take the goods back? Are they still trading? I have to assess a little bit more information would be good.
This is one thing which is the trend which I can see in the questions, and it's something which I like to ask you. So is there any kind of set mandates where there's actually no way a collection can be taken, like for example, insolvency, or if the government of that particular country has gotten involved and has revoked the license? So are there some kind of mandatory things where a particular person will not be able to, recollect?
No, because it depends on each country, and each country has their own variables. So, I mean, off the top, say, for example, Japan, debt collectors are illegal in Japan. You can only use lawyers. So the government does not allow collection services. They only go through lawyers. But again, in Japan, they pay on their terms, and normally they don't pay when it's either a dispute or insolvency. There is no guideline because you have certain scenarios where goods are stuck at port, the buyer runs away. We have everything because our customers are from textiles to ICT to fertilizer to food to beverages, and every case is unique in their own manner. Very rarely do we get a simple, the buyer hasn't paid, can you call and they pay? It's always is unique, especially in the case that Raj put up. It depends on the country, the jurisdiction, the sector, and what has gone wrong, where the goods are, what type of goods they are, how old the debt is the buyer there? So there's a few questions that we like to look at to see what we can do.
All right. So, like you mentioned, a minimum recovery is usually 1,000 USD. So, is there any maximum recovery limit as well?
No.
No, it could be anything.
We have debts. The average size debt we have is normally 30 to 40,000 USD, but we have big ones now in India, for example, on Cox and Kings for approximately 11 million euro. So there's all types of debts that we do.
All right. Okay. I'm going to mention this again. Yes, domestic payments are also possible.
Yes.
Guys, we will share you everything. I have all your registration base. So I will be mailing across you the details and everything. So that's one. I want to understand, the exporter in China. Like, for example, there's this one attendee, Mr. Rakesh, who has posted a question. The exporter in China doesn't have a bank account to receive money in USD. So they send the bill from another company with the USD bill. So how can they remit money to an exporter in China in US dollars?
I wouldn't believe them. If they knew that the goods, they might say that. So in Vietnam, this occurs quite a lot. They say that they can only trade in the local currency, that their bank doesn't have the facilities to trade in a different currency. I think, to be honest with you, I think it's a lie. We've had that situation occur many, many times. We do have 3 offices in China, in Chengdu, in Shanghai, and Beijing. So we'd be happy to contact the buyer and to actually find out if that's the truth or not, because I don't think there's any reasons why an international bank can't remit foreign currency or foreign funds. I don't believe that at all. I think that could be an excuse for payment.
Okay. All right. One more thing which I would like to ask is, how do you guys, is there any criteria to select the customers? So we know there's a criteria to select the buyer in terms of when it comes to recovery. But, like the way we see out here, people have a lot of questions. So in terms of they want to apply to the entire process, so is there any criteria to select a customer, and is there any kind of payment which gets involved?
In terms of us selecting our customers that we work with? So can you elaborate on the question?
Could you hear me?
Hello? No, I can hear you now, sorry.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm talking about, is there any selection to the customer as well? Is there any criteria to select a customer?
For Atradius Collections, when we choose our customer?
Yeah.
It depends. So as long as you're trading on open account terms, we can help you if there's a overdue debt and a receivable there. The most difficult that I find in my experience and globally is food and beverage, because they have very, very short terms. So it could be 7 days, 30-day terms if you're in food and beverage. Normally, if they stop supplying or they stop requesting for further goods, the bar or the restaurant has shut down. If you don't have a personal guarantee or a director's guarantee, the restaurant shut down. Normally, it's a very small entity. They close business and that's it. And when we get those type of accounts, I would say 95% of the restaurant or the bar has already closed, or the catering company is already closed. It's too late. So unfortunately, we probably have the worst success rates in the F&B industry.
Okay. Like the way you said, in Japan, it's illegal to appoint a debt collector and you'll have to go through a legal procedure.
Yes.
So there's a question. I know the answer is obviously yes. Appointing debt collector is legal in India. That's the reason we have offices out here. Is there any other country in specific where debt collector is not allowed and they'll have to go, because we have exporters who are exporting into different countries. So like the way Japan is one of them. Do you have any other case?
Japan is the only one that I know off the top of my head, or large developed countries. Now there are other countries where we can't help you because they're sanctioned by either the US or the European Union. So I know off the top of my head, for example, Yemen, Syria, Republic of Congo, Nigeria is opened up again. A lot of the African countries, we do have sanctions there. For whatever reason, it could be the government that's in power is not agreeable to the EU, or vice versa. So we can't actually operate under our license. They don't allow us to operate in those countries. Normally, any large debt collector as well, it would be sanctioned under the same laws that we can do there. Apart from Japan, is the only one that I know off my head. We do find in a lot of developing regions one other issue, which is similar to this, is the central bank stops the outflow of currency. So in Nigeria, it's very common for customers, say in Africa, in Middle East or India, sending goods to Nigeria, and the central bank there, depending on the capacity of how many USD dollars they have, the central bank sometimes puts a pause and puts a delay, and then the customer wants to pay, but the central bank won't release or allow the bank to send funds through. So that it really depends on the time, depends on the region. But mostly Middle East, Africa are the regions where we can't help. Europe, I think almost every country we can. Asia, almost all countries except Japan. Myanmar, Laos are the difficult ones, but we don't have much activity there. Hello?
Yeah. We've had, I think we've kind of answered all the questions. I'm just going to try something new feature, which is going to give a mic to a particular customer. I'm just going to try and check if the particular customer will directly ask you a question.
Sure.
So Rajesh, I've handed the mic over to you, so you can read the query.
Hi, everyone. To understand whether it will be a non-recourse or recourse type of arrangement where the debt collection or you are appointed as a debt collector.
What do you mean by recourse or non-recourse? Normally, we apply that term in factoring, but
mainly in terms of whether you will be buying the debt from us and then you will be taking care of the responsibility in terms of recovery, or whether you'll come back to us if it is not recovered as such.
No, so you have different companies that will buy debt or buy a portfolio of debt, but Atradius Collections wouldn't do it on a recourse basis. We would purely do it on a non-recourse. So we don't buy debt; we collect on your name. So if you have a portfolio of say 100,000 USD, we charge approximately 20%. I'm just putting up some numbers there. Then we would apply a success fee. So we would chase your buyers, and then if the buyer pays, we take a cut from the payment, but we don't buy the debt.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
No problem.
All right. So I'm gonna pass on to the next attendee. I think we are having a kind of net issues with okay, I think we have Mr. Sukhi Chirag.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. You can raise the query.
Okay, yeah. So hi, Ivor, I have a one query. I mean, we work very closely with Atradius Trade Credit Insurance. Okay.
Ah.
Uh, yeah. So we are basically a factoring company, and we work with Atradius Insurance very closely. I have one specific query with regards to COVID-19 sort of payment delays. Yeah. I mean, just a very question. Now. Though this case wherein Atradius is pulling out their limits, and we are left with no option but to pursue collection through the local local laws, like say for example we may try through NCLT.
Mhm.
What do you think, wherein a debt which was basically a pre-COVID, but now that in the COVID and since the lockdown, wherein even the local regulations have made it like, offered moratorium, and customer, he is in a very situation wherein he can't pay us because of lockdown and everything.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to understand, how, will it be successful in collecting such debt if we still want to pursue it through Atradius collection?
Okay, so this is probably for domestic India. It's a good question, and thank you for the
Yeah. So
question,
just to
because
give you a brief of the trade, this was import into India from a Germany supplier.
import into India from a German supplier. Yeah, so there is no. We had a call this morning, funnily enough, with Arun and our lawyers, because we also asked the question to our lawyers that are currently based in Delhi, or one of our lawyers that we have there in Mumbai, on what we can do, because we need to advise our customers of the current situation, especially with coronavirus in India and the courts being closed and the recent changes to the NCLT. So our lawyer actually gave us a really good update. There are three main things that are happening. They've obviously closed the courts. The NCLT courts for now. They haven't actually passed the mandate and the law. They've just advised what they will be doing. So our lawyer has suggested to wait till around June to see what the government actually passes under law. And then once they pass that law, they'll update the judges. So our lawyer last week joined the webinar with the NCLT judges, and he asked the same questions that you have and that we have on what's going to happen. So his suggestion to us was wait till June. Under June, we'll probably know what's going to occur, because they'll either make it law or not. They have increased the limit to 1 crore to hear it in NCLT. But if your debt is below, we can still go under the civil proceeding. Now, what our lawyer thinks will happen is, if your debt is due before the lockdown, that the new rules won't apply to them. But that's their hunch. That's what they think will happen. But when the lockdown was announced in India, any invoices due after that the government might give a moratorium. That's what they think will happen. But again, we don't know yet, because they haven't passed any mandate.
Okay, because my only worry here is that, because say for example Atradius withdraw their limits, then I'm sure Atradius collection arm will also not much can do anything without limits being withdrawn, if I'm not mistaken.
No, so we can help. Actually, you're an insured customer of ours, of Atradius Credit Insurance, so we obviously support them in the recoveries of any of their clients. But even if you don't have a credit limit there, or if the credit limit was pulled a number of years ago or now, and if your customer or you do still have a payment issue, we can still help you.
Okay,
there's no issues. Yeah, so even if it could be insured with Atradius or it could be insured with someone else, it doesn't matter. As long as there's an invoice for one of your customers, we can help.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Ivor.
You're welcome.
All right, so we also have a particular question which basically talks about, in case the debt is not collected for a reason, then how would the fees be calculated?
We don't charge you. So we only charge, it's a no cure, no fee type basis. So if we don't collect, we don't charge you a fee. But we will look at the portfolio before we accept the debt. If I think we can't recover it, or it's just, debt is 5 to 10 years old, I'll respectively decline and say, look, this debt's a little bit too old, or we should have had some more proactive collections, and we can help advise you. We can look at your portfolio. But if we think there's a chance to recover, then we'll accept the debt. If after 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, we recover zero and we spend 6 months of our time, it doesn't cost you anything. That's the risk we take. That's our model.
That's great. I mean, for all the attendees, clearly, if in case your debt has not been able to recover, so there's going to be no fees charged. Obviously, the case and everything will be discussed first, and
Yes.
in the entire portfolio as well. Also, one last question for today. What are the other ways to recover the payments from companies under Creditors Protector Shield? So we discussed this case earlier as well. We have the same question once again.
Legally, you can't. If the court rules in favor of the directors applying for moratorium or judicial protection, legally you cannot. I have seen some customers where they're a bit cheeky, and they contact the suppliers or the buyer's buyer because they know that the end goods are going to someone else. So, for example, a distributor that's now under moratorium, the customer then contacts the buyer's buyer because they believe that the distributor won't be alive, and they start trading up front because the buyer hasn't paid that creditor either. But legally, we can't advise you to do that. I've seen some customers do it because they get into a different agreement with the buyer's buyer, or they skip the distributor who's in moratorium. But in terms of pursuing that buyer itself, you have to abide by the decision of the court.
All right. So just to sum everything up, the kind of case which we discussed, like in terms of if there is no recovery, there will be no fees charged. So once you get a particular portfolio of the customer, will there be any charge in terms of prior to collection?
We do sometimes have a file opening fee, and that's only if there is a portfolio that has many accounts. But we would obviously tell you up front. But normally we operate on our fee structure is a success fee basis. But we don't have any hidden fees. We don't have any yearly fees or closing type fees. It's the model operates on a trust and relationship. We have a contract as well, and our model purely operates on success.